Ben White walked out of the London stadium in a knee brace, and nobody is really talking about what that means. Not just for the Burnley game, not just for the title race, I mean for all of it. The whole picture, the thing Arsenal have been building toward for 3 years, because we are 5 points clear, at the top of the Premier League. We beat West Ham, Trossard scored, VAR backed us, and we are genuinely, realistically 1 game away from winning this league. And yet, I can't stop thinking about that image. Ben White, limping, knee in a brace, leaving the stadium before half-time, and Arteta in the press conference afterwards, a man who chooses his words very carefully, a man who almost never gives you the full picture in public. And what did he say? It doesn't look good at all. That's not Arteta being cautious. That's not media management. When a manager of his level says those exact words in a post-match press conference, you listen. Because he doesn't say that unless he means it. So before we get into tactics, before we get into who replaces who, before we get into the Champions League final, I need to ask you something. How serious is this actually? Because I think we might be underestimating it. And I also want to ask you, who do you think plays right back for Arsenal against PSG? Drop it in the comments right now, because that question is going to define the next 3 weeks of this club season. I'm Amelia. If you're new here, this is where we take Arsenal seriously. No noise, no hot takes for the sake of it. Just honest, deep analysis from someone who genuinely cares. If that's your thing, subscribe. It's free, and I'd love to have you here. Now, let's get into this, because here's the thing people are missing. It's not just Ben White. 3 players, 3 different injuries, 3 different timelines, and they all affect the same part of the team. Ben White, right back, knee brace, no return date. Arteta's own words, doesn't look good. Ricardo Calafiori, left side, defensive cover, one of our most versatile players, came off at half-time. Arteta confirmed it was forced, not tactical. Injury, Mikel Merino, midfield engine, foot surgery in February, back in individual training, not with the squad, not available yet, targeting the PSG final, but nothing is confirmed. 3 players, 3 injury crises, 2 games left in the most important season of the Arteta era. And I keep coming back to that image of White in the knee brace. Because the other 2 injuries, as serious as they are, they're not new information. We've been managing Calafiori's fitness all season. We've known about Merino since February. But White was supposed to be fine. White was the one we weren't worrying about. And now he might be the biggest problem of all. Let me tell you exactly what happened. Because the sequence of events in that first half tells you everything you need to know about how fragile this squad is right now. White challenges Crescencio Somerville. It's a standard defensive duel. Nothing malicious, just football. And he goes down. And he needs lengthy treatment on the pitch. And then he comes off before half-time. Which, if you've watched Arsenal this season, you know that almost never happens with a player of his importance, unless something is genuinely wrong. And Arteta's decision in that moment, the replacement he chose, that's really interesting. He brings on Zubimendi, not a right back, not a natural defensive replacement, a midfielder, which means Declan Rice then has to shift to right back. Think about that for a second. Declan Rice, our best midfielder, the player who controls our tempo. Who does the defensive work that nobody else can do? Who allows Odegaard and the rest to function? He's now playing right back. And what happened immediately after that change? Arsenal lost control of the game. The structure went. The pressure on West Ham died. The match became uncomfortable. It became a game we nearly didn't win. And this is a problem that goes beyond one substitute, because it tells you something about where Arsenal are right now in terms of depth. When Ben White goes off, there is no natural replacement. There is nobody on that bench who can step in at right back and do what White does. That is the uncomfortable truth. And I think Arteta knows it. I think that's exactly what was behind those words after the game. It doesn't look good at all. He's not just talking about the injury. He's telling you, without saying it directly, that there is no easy solution here. Now, I want to be fair. I want to think about this from multiple sides. Maybe the knee brace was precautionary. Maybe the further testing Arteta mentioned comes back better than expected. Maybe White is back in training by Thursday and starts against Burnley. That's a possibility. I'm not ruling it out. But here's why I don't think we should bank on that. Arteta is one of the most composed, controlled managers in the Premier League. He does not panic in press conferences. He does not give you catastrophic injury updates unless he has to. And the fact that he gave that update, that specific phrasing, in the post-match presser, not even 24 hours after the game, before the full medical assessment was even complete, that tells me what he already suspected in the moment, that this is serious. And if it is serious, if White is ruled out for the remaining fixtures, if he misses Burnley, and more importantly, if he misses the PSG final, then Arsenal need to find a right-back solution in the next 10 days. And right now, I genuinely do not know what that looks like. Let me shift to Calafiori, because I think he's the second part of this story that's being slightly underplayed. There was genuine confusion about why he came off at half-time. Gary Neville said on Sky Sports he thought it was a tactical decision by Arteta, which, fair enough, it looked that way in the moment. Arsenal was struggling. Calafiori had a difficult first half. Mascara came on, the shape changed, but then Arteta clarified after the game. It wasn't tactical. Calafiori was injured, and that changes the whole conversation. Because this is a player who has been managed all season, carefully, almost delicately, and to his credit, Arteta has been honest about this. He said, and I'm paraphrasing here, that the most difficult thing to manage this season has been Calafiori's fitness, that they didn't expect it to take this long, that even now he's not fully fit to play. Think about what that actually means. We've been fielding a player who, by his own manager's admission, isn't fully fit. We've been rotating him carefully, resting him when we can, trying to protect him for the big moments, and it still hasn't been enough. He still came off injured against West Ham. Now, I'm not here to criticize Arteta for that. Managing a squad through a title race and a European run at the same time is one of the hardest things a manager can do. You can't wrap players in cotton wool. At some point, they have to play. But I do want to be honest about what this means going forward. Calafiori is not going to be available for both Burnley and PSG. That's my gut feeling. The injury record, the pattern of management, the fact that we still don't have a diagnosis from the West Ham game, all of it points to a player who needs rest more than he needs minutes right now. And if that's the case, if Calafiori is effectively ruled out for the run-in, then the left side of Arsenal's defence is also a problem, not just the right, both flanks, both full-back positions in the final 3 weeks of the season. And this is where it gets even more complicated. Because the player who could solve some of these midfield and structural problems, Mikel Merino, is also not fit. Now, Merino's situation is slightly different. He had foot surgery in February. He's been out for over 2 months. He's back on the grass now, doing individual work. And the suggestion from people around the club is that he could potentially be available for the PSG final on May 30th. But listen carefully to what Arteta actually said about that. He said, and I want to be precise here, I don't know, there's still a fair bit to do. Everything needs to be so smooth and quick if they want to have a chance to play any minutes. So smooth and quick. That is not a confident manager talking about a player who is close to selection. That is a manager who is hoping for the best while preparing for the worst. And I think we need to hear it for what it is. The reality is this: Merino has not played since February. He has not trained with the squad. He has not experienced match intensity, pressure, the physicality of top-level football in over 2 months. And we're talking about potentially bringing him into a Champions League final against PSG. That's an enormous ask. Even if Merino makes the squad, and I genuinely hope he does, because what he adds to this team is irreplaceable, he will not be the Merino who was building momentum before the injury. He will be a player who is 50–60% of himself. And in a final against one of the best teams in Europe, that might not be enough. So let me put the full picture together, because I want you to really feel the weight of what we're looking at. 2 games left, Burnley at home on Monday, PSG in the Champions League final on May 30th, Ben White possibly out, knee injury, brace, no return date, Ricardo Calafiori possibly out, pattern of managed fitness, forced half-time withdrawal. Mikel Merino, targeting the PSG final, but with serious question marks over match readiness. That is 3 key players, across 3 different positions, 3 different injury profiles, and 2 games where all 3 of them were needed. And here is the question I keep coming back to. The one I think gets to the heart of this. Who plays right back in the Champions League final? Because if White is out and the signs are pointing that way, then Arteta needs an answer to that question. And he needs it before Monday. Option 1, Declan Rice at right back. We've seen it. It works. Sort of. But it costs us Declan Rice in midfield. And against PSG's midfield, against Fabian Ruiz, against Vitinha, against the intensity of what Enrique has built playing without Rice in his natural position, is a massive, massive risk. Option 2, Mosquera, the young Spaniard who came on against West Ham. Talented player, promising. But asking him to start a Champions League final against PSG at right back, against whoever is operating down that left side, is an enormous amount of pressure to put on a player with very limited top-level experience. Option 3, you restructure the whole shape. You shift to a back three. You use different players in different positions and change the system entirely to compensate for the personnel you don't have. None of these options are comfortable. None of them are what Arteta would choose if he had a full squad available. And that's the whole point. This is a manager who has built his entire system around specific players doing specific jobs. Ben White at right back isn't just a player. He's a function. He overlaps. He compresses. He defends 1v1 better than almost any fullback in the league. He gives Saka the freedom to operate higher because White is always there to cover. Take White away, and you don't just lose a right back. You change how the whole right side of Arsenal's team works. You change what Saka can do. You change the defensive block. You change the press triggers. That is the real cost of this injury. I want to say something bold here. Something I genuinely believe. I think Arteta has mismanaged Calafiori's fitness this season. And I say that with respect, because I think Arteta is an exceptional manager, and this has been an exceptional season. But the evidence is there. By his own admission, his own words, Calafiori has been played while not fully fit. They expected him to recover faster and he didn't. They kept him in the squad, kept giving him minutes, kept managing the situation in-game rather than just giving him the extended rest he clearly needed. And now, at the worst possible moment, it's catching up with them. I'm not saying it was a bad decision in context. When you're fighting for a title and a European trophy simultaneously, you can't afford to take your best players out of the squad for months at a time. The pressure is enormous. The stakes are real. You need your players available. But the consequence of that decision is sitting right in front of us now. A player who has been running on limited fuel all season, who came off injured against West Ham, who might not make it to either of the final 2 games of the year. And that's a hard thing to sit with, because it means the decisions made over the last 3 months are now shaping what happens in the next 3 weeks. Here's what I think happens, and I want to be honest. This is my honest read, not optimism for its own sake. I think White misses Burnley. I think that's already decided in Arteta's head, even if it hasn't been announced publicly. The risk of playing him on a potentially serious knee injury, in a game where Arsenal already have a 5-point cushion, that risk is too high. You protect White for PSG, even if it means a harder Burnley game. And that means Burnley, which should be a formality, becomes something else entirely. It becomes a genuine test, because without White, without Calafiori at full fitness, Arsenal's defense is patchwork, and Burnley, even in a relegation fight, will sense that. For PSG, I think Merino makes the squad. I think Arteta brings him back and gives him whatever minutes he can manage, not because Merino is ready, but because the alternative is worse. The alternative is going into a European final without your only dedicated defensive midfielder who can also carry the ball. And the right-back question, I genuinely don't know. I think Arteta is still working through that. I think that's the decision that keeps him up at night right now. And it should. Because whoever plays right back in that final is going to face one of the most talented attacking units in European football. And they're going to need to be ready, truly ready, not fit enough, not passable, ready. There's an emotional side to all of this that I don't want to rush past. Think about Ben White right now, as a person, as a footballer. He has been one of Arsenal's most consistent, most dependable, most underappreciated players for the last 3 seasons. He does the work that doesn't get the highlights. He defends aggressively. He reads the game brilliantly. He covers for Saka in a way that most people in the stands don't even notice. And this season, this specific season, is the title, the Champions League, the historic double that this squad has been grinding toward. And he might watch it from a physio room. That is a brutal thing. It is football at its most unfair. And I think as Arsenal fans, as people who care about these players, not just as assets, but as human beings, we should hold space for that. Because beneath all the tactics, beneath the formations and the match analysis and the debate about who starts at right back, there is a person who got injured doing his job and might miss the biggest moments of his career. That matters. That's real. So where does this leave us? 5 points clear. Burnley at home on Monday. A Champions League final on May 30th against PSG. Arsenal can still win both. I believe that. I genuinely believe this squad, even injured, even stretched, even under pressure, has enough quality to see this through. But it requires things to go right. It requires the medical staff to work miracles. It requires Arteta to make some of the most difficult selection decisions of his managerial career. And it requires the players who are available, the ones who are fit to play the best football of their lives. Mosquera needs to be ready. Whoever plays in those positions needs to step up in a way they haven't been asked to before. And here's my final thought on all of this. The hardest part of building a great team isn't the victories, it's the moments where everything is on the line and something breaks. This is one of those moments. This is the moment where you find out if the squad depth is real. If the culture is real, if the belief is real. Because when the best players go down, and they always do, at the worst possible time, that's just football. The only question that matters is who stands up. I want to believe Arsenal have the answer. I really do. But I'm also honest enough to say I'm worried. And I think you are too. So tell me, drop it in the comments. Are you worried about what's coming? Do you trust Arteta to find a solution? And I'll ask it again, who do you think plays right back in the Champions League final? Because I've been turning it over in my head all day, and I still don't have a clean answer. Let me know yours.